All right. What's going on, everybody? I am truly thrilled today. I'm usually thrilled when I say it, but I'm extra thrilled today to be here with my friend Bill. Uh, Bill Blanchard and I have known each other for a very long time. And Bill probably has more embarrassing and funny stories about me than I have about him because Bill is the guy that gave me a shot in this industry way before I started making these videos. Um, he hired me with no relevant professional experience, no relevant education of any kind. I don't think I've ever shared this on the channel, but hired me basically on the perceived strength of a cover letter and changed the trajectory of my life significantly by doing that. Um, yeah, so that was my first I guess partially Linux, but mostly Windows sysadminning gig. I'm thrilled to have you on, Bill,
Yeah.
and you have a whole lot of experience to share with, I think, well, me still at this point, and definitely anybody that's subscribed to the channel about the situation we find ourselves in this current hiring climate and the job hunting process and everything else. So, welcome.
Thank you for having me on. I believe your most recent job experience when I hired you was your last job was doing Chinese acupuncture.
Yeah, that's
Or-
right. That's right. I
So,
worked at a Chinese acupuncture, like pressure point massage, and like herbal shop, basically. Yeah.
there's the ability to transition from any career into
Yeah.
tech. There's hope for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is funny because I never combined those two domains together. I never like wrote the app for acupuncturists or anything. Maybe, well, maybe there's still time. I don't know.
All right.
Um, Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say thanks for having me. One of the things that we were going to talk about today is I went to the Boston Python group probably a couple months ago now, and gave a presentation on finding your first job in tech, essentially. It was primarily software driven, but for most folks, whether you're in systems, DevOps, software, whatever your pleasure is, I think the same rules apply. And Dave was kind enough to let me dry run it through him a few times, give me some notes. So, now I'm repaying the favor by sharing it with your community.
Yeah, I feel like if this goes well, you can be like Cher or something. We could just like take up residence in a city and just give this talk like every night for 300 nights. No, I one thing, I'm not spoiling the punchline, Bill. Bill has we haven't gone specifically into his background, but Bill has a lot of authority and experience that this is coming from, and I think you will notice that in the way that this, like the perspective that this talk comes from, and the kind of questions it asks that I think are just like different from what you generally hear about advice about getting a tech job. So I'm thrilled, and we'll make a lot of pit stops along the way to make this a kind of interactive experience. So
All right, well, let's fire up the
roll it.
deck. So, what's a little bit different about this presentation is that this is most useful for folks who are looking to transition out of a non-tech career into a tech career. There are rules of the road lessons here that can be used by people who are graduating school, coming out of a boot camp, whatever your pleasure. But for folks who are further along in their career and are looking to make the transition for whatever their stated reason is, I think there's some, we'll call it unique guidance here. So I think a lot of the framing around finding your first tech job is, do get some kind of relevant education, whether it's a computer science degree, do a boot camp, get a certification, anything from that lane, and then just apply until you're blue in the face, or network with other folks and hope to get lucky. I think what my hope here is to kind of reframe it in a manner that gives you more ways to attack the problem than just trying to brute force your way through the front door. And everybody has different goals in terms of what they're trying to hit. Some people want to work for a FANG and make, lots of money. Other people do this for the love of the game. They want to do open source work or anything of that nature. Um, but I think what is most important in any of those is just getting the first job. The very, very, very first one is always the hardest, and I'll go into why. But if your goal is to do any of those other things, realize that there are many steps to get to that path. It's not just do this one thing and start applying. So that brings me into, start of the presentation is understanding that finding a job is a sales process. Most folks we're technical, we're not as in looking, we're not thinking about things from the social perspective. And when you're applying for a job, your focus tends to be more on what can I do as opposed to understanding what other people are looking for. So when you're doing sales, it's less about like, hey, I have this great good or this great product. I'm trying to convince people to buy it. What you're really trying to do is match your product with a particular market or a particular customer. Trying to sell me a Ferrari, no matter how good your sales pitch is, I'm not buying because I can't afford it. So if you're selling me a Toyota Camry, well, that's a little bit more on my budget, so let's talk. So when you're pursuing a job transition or trying to find that first job, you have to understand that the employer is the customer. And with the employer being the customer, you have to figure out how to position yourself and identify the right customers to sell your skills to. So your skills are the product and you're trying to find the best fit. When you're just starting off, you may be thinking, well, my skill portfolio isn't terribly deep, but I guarantee you there's something in there that somebody's looking for. It just might take a little bit of work to try to find it. So at the end of the day, why do employers hire? And that may seem like a ridiculous question, but I think it's one of those things that not many people spend much time thinking about. So there's a handful of reasons why an employer will want to make the investment in the additional, the hiring process and paying payroll and benefits that comes with it. So the one that everybody always thinks about is they just need more people doing what they're doing. And I think we tend to have like a little bit of a over focus on that. We just look at job postings and we're like, oh, they just need more people. That's not always true. But this is a good potential scenario for us to consider if we have an appropriate match. Now, another potential scenario that you might see is that they're backfilling a departure. I have a team of 5 software developers. One of those folks decides to move on for whatever reason. I have 4 software developers and I need to get somebody in to do that work. As a new person making a transition in the industry, is that going to be a good fit for you? I don't know. Not unless the person you're replacing is maybe a junior or you have a particular skill set that aligns with that. But most backfills, they have a number of years working in that position, and the hiring manager is looking to bring somebody in as quickly as possible, get them up to speed. And if you, as somebody making a transition, maybe that's not as great a fit. One thing we'll kind of briefly mention but skip over because it's not really applies to us is some jobs are compliance or regulatory based. If you're a public company, you have Sarbanes-Oxley requirements, which means you need an auditor and you need somebody who knows that stuff. In tech, the compliance regulatory stuff, we're not really focusing on that unless you're coming from that world and trying to leverage those skills into a technical job, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. A skill gap has been identified in their existing workforce. So I have decided for whatever reason, I'm going to give Hashi the cheap plug here. My company is moving their DevOps infrastructure as code to Terraform, and none of my folks know Terraform. So maybe I will go out and hire somebody with a particular skill set related to Terraform, train the trainers, and help build out the team. That's just one potential example. But sometimes there's blending of skills. So software developers, Usually they're working with a particular language. Usually they're working with like a particular like database, database management system. They're working with a particular operating system, whatever the case is. But it's rare that they get everybody, a single person who checks all those boxes. And maybe there's a new piece of technology that they're looking at deploying, like, now the augmented content or the AI stuff, building out your own repositories or models. That's something that everybody's obviously super interested in right now, but there's lots of different technologies that have come on the market that an existing team might not have a good fit for. Now, maybe your projects, your personal projects, allow you to check a box that makes you a more compelling candidate when you apply a way to stand out. And lastly, they're developing a new product or process. So for your large mega corporations, chances are they've spent months, maybe years planning this thing out, and they're putting together the budgets and the resources and all that, this, that, and the other thing. And they have in mind how they're going to build this thing out. Either they're going to utilize some existing teams or they have a mindset for how they want to approach it. For large companies, as a new person, you might not fit into this planning structure, but companies, small companies also do this. Small companies, their benefit is that they're a lot more flexible. They change their mind a lot. They can invest in something and then stop all of a sudden. But the problem with small companies is they don't have the existing resources to draw on. If I wanted to develop a new software product at my company where I manage a team of 7 developers, I can ask my developers, hey, what do you think about this? How long do you think it's going to take? But there's lots of small businesses out there who don't have any technology resources in-house, period. They might have a contract IT service. They might never have developed their own software platform before. So they're going to be making a look that first hire, and that might be a good opportunity for you to try to fit in the door. So now that we know the 5 reasons why employers hire, well, what does that mean for us as somebody newly transitioning the industry? That allows us to direct our energy to where we're applying and where we're trying to build our skill sets. If you're blasting out like 100 resumes a day, fire and forget, not even reading the job description, you're doing it wrong. You're just wasting time. You're wasting your time and you're wasting the hiring manager's time.
And my time,
So
because I'm applying too, and you're just getting in the way.
yeah, so I flip through LinkedIn every now and then. Like I have a lot of recruiters on my LinkedIn and everything like that. And somebody posted a job that was 2 hours old, and I was curious because I was like, well, this aligns with my skill set pretty well. I wonder what, not that I'm looking to make a move, but I was like, what's the market like? I'm always asking myself that question. I clicked on it. The job posting had been up for 2 hours and it had over 100 applicants. I mean, it's crazy right now, like in terms of just the AI component allows folks to even tailor their resumes on the fly and just spam applications, and it makes it super difficult to try to separate yourself.
Yeah, the technical like barrier to spamming has gone way down now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Um, so again, like, it's not always going to be readily obvious. Like you read a job posting, like what's the scenario that they're up against? Like what's one of those 5 reasons that they're looking to make this fill? Sometimes you'll be able to figure it out because they describe what the day to day is going to be like, or they're going to describe, we're building a new team, or we're growing like crazy, so we're augmenting all that stuff. So that might give you a little bit of insight into what's going on. But ultimately, it's about, networking, not in the I'm going to go to this event or this conference and I'm going to talk to some folks and hand out my resumes. That's fine. I'm talking about asking your good friend Dave, hey Dave, what's going on, with your company? What are the types of people you're looking to hire? What are skills are in demand? Do you know anybody who's hiring right now, or what should I be considering? That's like, planting a garden. You're trying to plant a lot of seeds so that you can hopefully have a bountiful harvest later. That's how I view networking. But in terms of like the actual building your skill set and doing the application process, you want to be kind of thinking about this.
Can I just say
So,
one thing about networking is also like what you said, I think is exactly right. And also that doesn't actually mean message me, right? I think some people on this channel have gotten the wrong idea, and I get the occasional LinkedIn message like, yo, can you get me in here? But like I'm not gonna recommend you, not really,
mhm.
if I've never worked with you, I don't know you. Like you have to do that work ahead of time, like before you need it. And that kind of sucks to hear when you need it, and especially when you're breaking into the industry, which is I think what Bill says. The first one is just the absolute hardest one because you have no relevant network yet, and you have to find this sort of accidental network that you might have in terms of your own skills and who you know. Oh, they work at a company now. They're not in the engineering department, but maybe they know they can get me in touch with somebody. Um, so yeah, but that's like I think that's priority one, not super relevant to the point in time that this content is kind of talking about. But as soon as you start working in this industry, this is like why. Don't be a dick. Be nice to
Mhm.
work with. Be friendly. Be open minded. Like, always be learning. Don't make other people's lives hard because those people are who are going to get you your next job and your job after that. And you're going to have to do less and less brutal interviewing because, like, people will already know you. So, I think planting a seed, like you're gardening here, is like the perfect metaphor for this. This is like a long term game that you're starting to play um, immediately.
The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. So, particularly like if you're viewing this and you're even just thinking about making a transition, you haven't actually started the process or gone through, the educational materials or just doing the work. If you're even thinking about it, now's the time to start talking to people and not to sidebar too much. Like what Dave said about people reaching out to him, it's like, hey, can you put in a word for me? It's like, oh, I don't know you. But the way to network well is to be able to do things for other people. It's not about Dave, what can you do for me? It's Dave, what can I do for you? It's like, here's some different things that I can do. Is there anything I can, just does that do you need anything like that? And Dave might go, no, I don't, but I know a guy who does, or I know a person who does, and that's how you kind of build the chain. People approach networking as like, I need a job. The worst time to try to start networking is when you need to, because then it's all about, oh my God, I need. But when you're doing a good job networking, it's like I can, and try. That's how you build the network. It's like they like if solving problems. If I need a Terraform expert and I got to ask him a question, or I want to hire a consultant, Dave, hey, you're my guy because I know you. I know you can help me solve this problem. You know, that's what the bigger picture of networking is about. The way to be a good networker is to do things for other people, not to ask them to do things for you. That's why it's such a long game. But in terms of like the targeting piece, everybody always thinks like, they want the tech job. They want to be working on cool and exciting bleeding edge technology and they want to make a lot of money doing it. Those are the megacorps, like your Fangs, your Nvidias, all those. Everybody, most I won't say everybody, a lot of people want that to be where they wind up. You know, right reasons, wrong reasons, whatever. But when I talk to people, that's the eye on the prize. But getting into those places coming out of a transition, or unless you're applying to like a new grad job and you went to like a Harvard, MIT, a Stanford, one of those most elite colleges, you're up against it. It's insanely difficult. Not impossible, but very difficult. But again, it's a long road, and you got to be willing to take multiple steps on that road. You can reach that goal. Um, I mean, I know a few people who started off at like, a small 10, 15 person company, and after a few years in the industry, they kept building and building and building, and now they work for your technology megacorps doing insane things that I can't even fathom. I'm speaking to one of them. Uh, so I
Insane things, yes, but you can definitely fathom them.
so a place that I would typically try to like direct your energies and efforts is non-technology companies, particularly the small ones, for a few different reasons. One, they don't typically have their pick of the litter. The prime candidates, they're all going for those jobs that I just mentioned. And if Joe's Construction, nobody's thinking, let me go on LinkedIn or Joe's Construction's website and see what they're hiring for, and let me try to get in there. Um, but I guarantee you there's the Joe's Constructions out there of the world who need software developers, systems engineers, anything along those nature. And, it's they recognize, a lot of them recognize that, look, we can't get an MIT grad in here. We can't get the person who, wrote the CUDA libraries or anything like that. It's just not happening. But they don't need it either. Most of these shops, they need a basic CRUD application or some equivalent or somebody to help them manage all their business systems, your Salesforces, your NetSuites, all that stuff, and try to tie them all together into their business process. So what that also means, though, is they don't typically pay quite as well, but that's okay because we're, again, walking a path to get the long run. And what we talked about is the very first job is the hardest, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the other place that you can look at is if you're transitioning in a career, is look at companies and the verticals that you currently work in. The whole reason why I had the idea for this talk was I was at PyCon back in May, and I was sitting with a person who was looking to transition into the career, and he showed me his resume, and I go, holy, this dude literally was building bridges, like big bridges, like, 4-lane bridges and everything. And I'm like, that's wild. I mean, obviously you're super intelligent, like you have a lot of skills. I go, why don't you look at, trying to leverage, that work, transition in the engineering space? He goes, I'm fried. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I'm like, all right, but that's where you're going to get a good opportunity because there are lots of developers out there, but not a lot of developers who can build bridges. And that gives you a unique advantage when you're applying to a company that builds bridges. And again, we're just trying to do the first one. So whatever your vertical is, like I have another friend that I dry run this with. He goes, if you work at a pizza joint, you can build a pizza joint some software, whether it's a website, whether it's like, I don't know if I would recommend like trying to replace DoorDash as your first side project, but you could do it. You could also help, automate some of their stuff, or they probably have a point of sale system. How can I integrate the point of sale system into whatever their accounting package is, or into some reporting package or whatever? Help them plot their customers on a map so they can get a better idea. This is if you work at a pizza place. Imagine all the other places you've worked and all the crazy ideas that you can have to leverage your skill set to help those companies out.
I love this. I have to break in here because this is, I think, such an incredibly good and important idea. It sounds just like any other good idea, but it's so much better than most of the good ideas you're going to hear today because it's domain expertise is the hard part about building software. Like everyone can write a function, everyone can talk to a database, everyone. It's just like the problem is the first time a generalist software developer designs an application to do X, not knowing truly the domain of X, they're going to design it wrong. They're going to make it efficient in the wrong places and slow in the wrong places. They're going to make the wrong trade offs. They're going to model the problem wrong. Like half of designing it is like modeling it, right? Like what are the pieces of the application? How does this? You're essentially making a sort of digital model of a real world thing and process and a bunch of nouns running around doing verb things to each other, and that's like you're trying to represent that as code. And it's like the world's biggest advantage is to have an already correct mental model of that. Like you're just skipping 90% of the hard part of software development. And then, sure, if you're not the greatest software engineer, which is like, how do I write the classes? Should this be an interface? Should I abstract this a little more? Should it be less abstract and much more clear and direct? Which things are likely to change in the future and which aren't. Like that's all informed to some degree. The hard trade-offs are informed by the domain, and those other trade-offs are just like the craft, and that stuff is like you could learn that anywhere, and you will learn that at your first job, hopefully. Um, so yeah, I think throwing this is like I think your biggest weapon going into this is what you already know.
And then the last one, perfectly along those lines, is the best way to get work under your belt is just do it at your current job. Like, let's say you're an accountant, or you can program some Excel spreadsheets, or just write some macros or some scripts to help you do the stuff you need. You can take that data and put it into a custom built dashboard or build some reporting metrics about it. Accounting tends to lend itself to this stuff, but again, if you're working in a pizza joint, wouldn't it be cool to be able to plot all the customers for the last, month on a map so you can figure out, where's my revenue coming from? Should I be marketing to different places? There's lots of opportunities to do this without getting the title of software developer or without getting the title of software systems engineer, but we'll worry about that later. It's more about getting getting this work under your belt. So, you know, ultimately, like kind of what Dave was alluding to with, the domain expertise is the business owner has a problem that they want solved, or they have a product that they want to sell. The code, like, as when we have imposter syndrome, when we're just starting off and everything, we're so concerned about, oh my God, is my code messy? Did I comment it well? Did I could I have used a class here instead of a function here? All that stuff. The God honest truth, unless you're working on a large development team, the business owner doesn't care. It could be the world's messiest code, but if it works and it solves the problem, that's their primary interest. So again, it's different if you're on a team of developers, but if you're a solo, if you're working solo or it's you and maybe one other person, then you can get you will get better at code quality the more experience you get, but don't get too hung up on it when you're starting out. It's about solving problems. So along those lines, so what's an employer thinking when they're looking at a resume on their desk or a candidate sitting in front of them on an interview or when they're deciding how they want to attack the interview process? So the very first question is, can the person I'm looking at solve the problem that I'm having? The problem, again, going back to the reasons why we hire, it could be I need stuff to turn around quicker and I don't have enough people. I'm launching a new product. I have this great idea that I want somebody to go build for me, but they're thinking about the candidate and looking at the teeny tiny window they have into your personality or your skill set and trying to decide, can this person solve my problem? And if you think about it, it's like even the longer interview processes, we're making decisions that cost tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars and a lot of our time by only spending a couple hours together or looking at what you wrote on a piece of paper. So it's a really hard decision, and that's tends to be why it's a little bit more difficult to get the first job, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's the most important question: is I'm trying to evaluate, can this person help me solve my problem? How long is it going to take for this person to get up to speed to help me solve my problem? That's why seniors are so in demand these days, seniors, principal, staff, whatever your title of choice is, because there's the perception that that person has a lot of experience, and because they have a lot of experience, I can just parachute them in, and there will be a learning curve, but the learning curve will be much shorter. That's the hurdle that the juniors need to clear these days, is because everybody doesn't want to build a bench anymore. They don't want to wait for the person to come up to speed. So whether or not this is true, it's going to depend on a lot on the candidates. I've seen great seniors, I've seen great juniors who get up to speed, and I've also seen bad seniors. I've seen title inflation, and folks who I thought maybe would have a short ramp period, it's a lot longer. But that's the perception that you're battling when you're one of 100 resumes in a pile. Um, will this person have a positive or negative impact on their teammates? This tends to suss out in the interview process. Um, it's gonna like this is the dreaded term culture fit. I'm not me personally, I'm not terribly concerned about do I want to have a beer with you, but I want to make sure that you communicate well, that you're a team player, that you're willing to roll your sleeves up and do some work that maybe not everybody's interested in doing. It's like go refactor the unit test suite. Like, what do you mean? I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, everybody's got to roll their sleeves up and get in there and do the work that needs to be done. And if I'm hiring senior folks, I want to know that they're going to share their knowledge. And if they're junior folks, I want to know that um, they're going to exhaust all their knowledge before they start asking questions. I want you to ask questions, but not if you didn't try stuff first. The first question I have for a junior when they approach me with a problem is, what did you try first? And if you didn't say anything, go back and start Googling or,
That's a strike. Not even
yeah,
Googling is a strike. Although now that's going to mean like not even asking ChatGPT, which is
yeah,
probably potentially worse because then it like could make you, you know, getting the wrong answer.
yeah,
Whatever. At least you tried something.
yeah. I mean, we could do a whole session on what you got to watch out for as a new person in the industry, leaning on AI too heavily. But yeah, we could probably do a whole talk on
That
that.
should be a whole talk. I have a really, really great junior, although he's barely a junior anymore on my team. And he has said some interesting stuff kind of to this effect, where he's like, I'm actually leaning much less on any kind of like help like that than I did when it first came out because, well, A, he's grown some, but he's like, I noticed it was slowing my growth. Like
Hmm.
it was making me stupid. He's like, it was making me forget how to write a for loop and go, you know? And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, totally. Like that can absolutely happen. Anyway,
you
another
can call
topic.
that the junior's dilemma. I'm trademarking that, by the way.
It's also called the seniors raise because the slower you mint juniors and bring them up, which is happening now, and the fewer of them you let into the industry, the more valuable it just drives up the price of seniors now. It's like you have fewer people who are at a level that you need to get up to speed fast. So people that are already in there benefit greatly, and that once that ladder gets pulled up, like it has for years now in our industry, where juniors are finding it harder and harder to even get started, that's it's not great. It's not great for anyone except for like Bill and me, you know. So let some juniors on your teams.
Yeah. So, like we just kind of talked about, is this person going to make my life easy or difficult? I want a problem solved. Um, I'm okay with answering questions if they're intelligent questions and you put in the work first. I don't want you to go off on a side quest because you were too afraid to ask a question. I just want to know what you tried first. If you didn't try anything, then you're never going to learn. If I give you the answer, you're going to forget it as soon as you walk back to your desk. And then this is the old uh, the return on investment question. Developers are expensive. Systems engineers are expensive. Not just in terms of salary, but in terms of like benefits. It's like if you're, I can't speak to every country, but if you're in the United States, whatever your salary is, tack on an additional 25 to 30% on it, and that's what the company is paying in benefits, whether it's like taxes, health insurance, all that kind of fun stuff. So it's not just your salary. There's a kicker on there on top of it, but also there's the cost of I select what I think is the right candidate, and then 3 months go by and I go, oh man, I got it wrong. And now I got to start all over again, and I'm 3 months further behind, and there was a lot of money spent on it. So, but ultimately, with like the return on investment costs, it's like this person's going to cost me X. I need Y in terms of productivity, additional revenue, um, a better product, any of those types of things. When I worked in consulting, your target was about, you were supposed to bill roughly 3 to 4 times whatever your salary was, so that the company could recognize an appropriate return on investment. Consulting, it's very black and white. It's hours in, hours out. But if for other companies, the math isn't quite as clear. But this is what we're thinking about: am I getting value for the money and the time I'm spending? Hiring is a massive, massive risk, whether it's a billion-dollar company or Joe's Construction that ekes out $1 million a year. Like I said, it's not just the dollars and cents. It's you're investing that time in the hiring process. You're investing that time in bringing them up to speed. You're investing that time in trying to bring the person up to speed with your organization and what your business does. And then you got to hope that they were the right decision, because if they're the wrong decision, again, you're out a lot of money and you're out a lot of time, and now you're back to square one. Not even square one, you're in the hole because of the money and the time that you invested. So this is why hiring is such a big, if you're a manager and you're not thinking this is a big deal, you're wrong. And I know, like, the larger companies, they'll just kind of cut large chunks of their organization almost on a whim. But, they paid for those people for all those times and everything, and all that energy and investment and everything. And for you as a employee or a candidate, that's an investment for you too. It's like you want to not just, like, sometimes you got to just take a job, but really what you want is the right job. Because it sucks for everybody involved if you get 6 months into it and it just turns out that it's not the right fit for whatever reason. So the reason why we're putting you through all these hoops is that we need to use this little bitty amount of time to make a massive time and financial decision. That's why, it's such a big deal. So why is the first job the hardest? For all the reasons that I just laid out. No one's vetted you yet, and a third party has not paid you money to to do the thing that we're hoping to hire you for. Um, you know, it's why do people love to hire from Harvard or MIT? They go, well, geez, if he got into Harvard or MIT, or if they got into MIT, then they must be really smart because they were able to survive that application gauntlet, where they only accept like 1% of applicants and all that stuff. They use it as a proxy or a signal for intelligence or capability. Now, reasonable people can disagree as to whether or not that's a good signal, or let me rephrase that, the right signal for what you're trying to do. That's what a lot of people do. They're outsourcing their evaluation process to other people. And as somebody who has not had a technology job yet, you haven't been through that gauntlet. Now, whether or not the gauntlet was difficult or good, when you look at a resume and when they see experience, what they're actually thinking in their head is they have done this thing for somebody else for money. And therefore, if somebody else was willing to pay for them to do it for X number of years or whatever, then it's more likely that they're not full of crap. And if I bring them in, then, I know that they have some kind of baseline of skills. Again, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do or the right decision, but subconsciously, a lot of folks consider that, and that's what's going on during the hiring process. So when we talk about getting that first job, this is why it's so hard, but it's also why it's so important. So all those questions that we just asked about, how, what I'm considering and when I decide who to hire or when to hire, we only have a few hours together, or I got a resume passing on my desk out, 1 out of 100. Hopefully somebody has helped me filter that down, whether that's software or recruiter, somebody else. But if I don't, I got a stack of 100 resumes on my desk. I got to figure it out. So reviewing resumes is the big first filter. There's a joke that's gone around, whoever the company is, you say it. If I have a stack of 100 resumes on my desk, I take the first 50 and I throw them in the trash because I don't want to hire anybody who's not lucky. That's the joke that's been going around, but almost that's what we're up against these days when you have all these automated application processes and you got hundreds of resumes. It's like, well, I got to do something to get it narrowed down.
Exactly. But you're actually a terrible company to work for, and that's why the first 50 were the lucky people, and the unlucky ones, those are the ones that now have a chance for working to you. There's a whole book about that. I think, what is it?
Yeah.
It's like Ringworld, Larry Niven, which interestingly Halo is kind of based on. Anyway.
But the resume for the junior is the hardest part. The rest of the stuff you can practice and get good at, but you have no control over your resume lands on my desk. Did I have my coffee this morning? Did is this resume 99 out of 100 or is it 1 out of 100? You have no control over of any of that. So if you're cold applying to a job, your resume as a junior is going to be super hard to make yourself stand out. So you almost want to try to avoid the cold application to the best of your ability. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But reviewing resumes, the lead code, the whiteboard, again, right or wrong, whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea, this is what companies are doing. There's all kinds of literature and materials out there that can teach you how to do that. It's just putting in the reps and getting good at it, but that's outside the scope about what we're talking about today. Interviews, this is where your domain experience is really going to set you apart. If you can talk at length about the particular problems that a business is having outside of whatever the technical domain is, that's going to give you a massive leg up on any of the other candidates. So the problem for most folks is getting to the interview, and because you got to go through this big filtering process just to get there. Again, there's lots of materials out there on how to perform well in an interview, but I would say you want to set yourself up for success by applying for the right jobs so that you can naturally succeed in the interview by having some kind of domain experience or some skill set that's going to lend itself well to the business that you're applying to. References are huge. Yeah, again, imagine you're going to the club and there's the big line down the block with the bouncer at the front door. That bouncer is your HR person or your resume software, and they're keeping all the folks out. What the reference does is allows you to get the velvet rope opened up and you walk right in. It gets you around that big honking line and it gives you a way to be pre-filtered and pre-qualified with less reliance on the resume to stand out in that massive sea of people. And I know we talked, like, how do I get the reference? And we kind of talked about the networking and everything. The reference is, for the technical stuff, is again, if you've proven yourself in the particular vertical doing something completely unrelated, you probably have a network of people that you can call upon and just be like, hey, I saw this job opening, or do you know anybody or anything like that, and kind of go around the process. My job before my most recent one was like that. I had a friend of a friend who says, oh, he was talking to his buddy, and he's like, oh, my friend Bill, he's out on the market. This is what he's really good at. And he's like, oh, we have an opening for something like that. Put me on the phone with them. We'll talk. Give me a resume, and I'll give him a referral. And that was what happened. Like the references are like the cheat code of the application process, I'm sorry, when I meant references, I meant referrals. That's kind of what I meant. References are something completely different. References are tended to be when you're at the end of the application and they just want to make sure that you're not lying and you worked where you said you worked. Some places are doing it these days, others aren't. Some places are just doing background checks, W-2 checks, payroll stub checks, whatever. But the referral is what I actually meant with that's what's going to get you in. So in this framework, these 5 methods that I have to pick you from, How do we signal our competency? We talked about the referrals giving you credibility through proxy, but the resume, again, for when we don't have that option, how do we stand out in that front? So this is an example of a chat GPT generated resume headline that I've seen all too commonly from people who are transitioning in the industry. Highlights, I have built Python and Django are my bread and butter, but whatever your framework or language is in this case. But I built a Django polls app using these technologies with clean architecture and user-friendly design. And oh, by the way, here's a link to my GitHub that shows you this toy project that I built. And I'm passionate about web development and modern frameworks. Well, I tell you what, I've seen 50 in a single job application. I probably see 50 of these. Where it's I built a toy application. Here's a link to my GitHub, and I'm very excited to work in the tech industry. Well, on a resume, that doesn't tell me a whole lot. You know what I mean? Um, but there are unique circumstances where that is not true, and the person I'm talking to is proof of that. He mentioned the cover letter bit, and to be clear, that was why I gave Dave the interview. It wasn't why I hired him, but it was what got him the interview. Was that he wrote a very detailed, passionate explanation of what he had been up to, and this was 15, 16 years ago now, so it's a little bit different now with all the automation and everything. But I was a small time employer. It's not going to work. I tell you what, it ain't going to work at FANG. The cover letter almost doesn't matter at that point. But if you're looking at a small business, they might actually read the cover letter, and you should, try to communicate, your skill set and why you're unique in that cover letter. But again, if you're going to a mega corp, it don't matter. Um, but then, let's look at the experience here. The experience is that I was a copywriter at a marketing company. Well, there's no technology experience here. And if I need somebody who can hit the ground running here, this is probably, if it's an internship, I will treat it a lot differently. But if it's a software developer position or even a junior software developer position, it's hard. It's a hard slog. I know people say build your toy projects and link your GitHub and everything. I'm not looking at your GitHub until it's near the end until we're getting to the interview process. If it's on your resume, I guarantee you 99% of people aren't clicking it. There's just too much to get through these days. And with the toy projects, looking at, well, this person's got clean code, that's all well and good, but, this is like the Django Polls app. The reason why I use it was that's the Django tutorial. You know what I mean? There's a million to-do list tutorials out there, and this, that, and the other thing. So this this would not be a strong resume for a junior if it landed on my desk. Now let's change it around a little bit. Experience. I was a Django developer for John Doe Development. You can use whatever name is appropriate here for your personal consulting company. I built a Django polls app for the local PTA to prioritize school projects. The PTA used it to vote on what projects they think had priority, and then based on the poll results, that was how we picked it. So how is this different than the last resume where we just looked at and said, well, I built a polls app, and here's a link to the GitHub. Somebody else used it in production. That is the main separator, is there's a million toy applications on the internet that people have just built to learn. And I'm not saying don't do that. Don't lead with that. If you have nothing else, well, it's like you use what you got. But ultimately, the toy application, nobody's paid you for it and nobody's using it in production. And let me tell you what, the first project you put in production in front of actual users is going to teach you things that you didn't even know you needed to know. Um, you know, you put up a web application on the internet, and all of a sudden you're getting bots hitting your website looking for WordPress security holes. You probably didn't, if you've never deployed a web application in production before, you probably didn't even know that was a thing. But the first one you ship, you're going to learn what you don't know real quick. And then the people actually using it tells me that you have built something of value. And all the better if you can get somebody to pay you for it, because now you're learning on somebody else's time. But even if it's not paid, I just want to know that you've done something for somebody else. And then you'll notice that the copywriter stuff is also still on there because you have work experience that may, like, if I'm a marketing company, that's going to be very specific to me. But even if I'm not a marketing company, well, you have some job experience. You're probably not a jerk like Dave was saying earlier. It's like, if you were there for a few years, hopefully you were easy to work with, all that kind of stuff. But you have some kind of business knowledge.
I'd love to. Can you go back to the resume? Yeah, I just wanted to say like the, I think the reason this is so, what this says to me as someone who knows what just the whole life cycle of software development is like when you're new, I think the way, at least the way that I thought about software development is like that pushing it to GitHub is like you're done, like you did it. And after you do this for a while, you realize like that is the first part of the first step of developing software. And so like when someone shows you a project on GitHub and you look, there's no Terraform directory, there's no README with deployment instructions that clearly have been used, and like, oh, you're gonna want like these shell variables exported because it's like a pain to put that in every time, and like I can tell if you have deployed this app or not, and if not, I can ask two questions and find out pretty quickly. Um, the Yeah, it's just like because we know the whole process, and as you come into this, this is a way for free or maybe even get paid to get an education probably better than you would at a boot camp, which is like the reality of software development. It's not just writing the code. It's like if you worked with a local PTA, you had to turn, like business requirements into technical requirements. You had to deal with people who wanted this to change or that to change. You had to go change the front end when someone was like, this button should be blue. Is that hard? And you're like, nope. And then they were like, this should magically know XYZ. Is that hard? And you're like, yes, it's impossible. Having to do all of that communicating and planning and translation is the hard part. Um, and then, of course, we also want to know that you implemented a thing to completion. That's another hard thing to do, or at least to the point where you're delivering value. But it's just all of these other skills that you know those don't get exercised or tested at all for leak code or interviews or even for like like the standard like kind of BS interviews that are conversational and it's like the star format and blah blah. Like you could just make up five of those, right? Like you could just chat GPT, make me up five technical like plausible star interview questions and answers for like an infrastructure gig. But like seeing this, being able to ask lots of questions about this, um, this tells me uh, that you have realistic experience. Obviously, you could also lie about this. I'm just saying you will be immediately found out like your first week. So don't.
Yep. And like people are going to get hung up on the fact that I put this under an experience bullet point and use John Doe Velleman, whatever your technical thing of, you know, whatever your company name of choice is. If you're doing work for other people, you're you're a business owner. You don't even have to be paid, but you're effectively a consultant or you're moving software for somebody else. You don't have to like get an LLC or a DBA or anything. It's like, when I do work for other people, or like when I used to do work for other people and it wasn't like rolled under a W-2 or like a full-time job employment or whatever, it went under, the bill consulting bucket, whatever name you pick. Now, like when you discuss it, you should be clear with folks, this is how I roll all my stuff under my umbrella. But getting through the resume filter, like when I have the 10 seconds that I'm flipping through your resume, I want to see, software developer on the experience section. You know what I mean? And if you can't put it there, it's so much harder. I'm not saying you gotta, like you have to have been a full-time employee for a company to put that on there, but you have to have done work for somebody else that you've shipped. And if you can do that, you can put it under that experience bullet point. And I'm not going to give you a hard time if you do. You know what I mean? I think that's a way to set yourself apart. So, what were we talking about when why the first job's the hardest? It's all about signaling. You're signaling through resumes, interviews, referrals, et cetera, et cetera. So via the resume, if somebody has hired you to do software work, it implies that you did a job for somebody else and you're capable of it. So that little bit of extra credibility versus like I have zero experience on my resume, that's a massive like the gap between 0 and 1 on that is massive. That's again why the first job is so important is to go from having zero to having something. It's a big honking deal. If you've done the work for somebody else, they've validated the work, again, signaling, and then you can use projects for others that have been used in production. I mean, I do work for friends all the time where it's just some stupid website or some script or whatever, but when I need to draw on that, that experience, it's like I can say, I did this work in this industry with this type of software or whatever, and it's experience. I'm not lying, it's actual experience that I did for work. Um, so kind of what Dave talked about a little bit earlier is like your education is gonna get a gas can poured on it as soon as you start doing work for other people because Dave's familiar with my favorite business metric thing, the Rumsfeld quadrant, where it's like you have known knowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns, and unknown knowns, whatever. But the idea is that when you're new, you don't know what you don't know yet until you actually get in the ring and start trying to do stuff. So if you've never launched a web application, you don't know that the background noise of the internet is just all the bots pinging IP 1.1.1.1 all the way up to like 255, 255, 255, 255. They just start at the beginning and they go to the end and they're just pinging stuff. So if you haven't locked your stuff down, well, it's not that anybody's targeting you, it's just the background noise of the internet's gonna find you. So like you have to you're gonna learn all this stuff working for other people. Now that's just the technical stuff. It's the working with people is really where you're going to learn different things and how users, most importantly, how users behave. So using the polls app, most of you probably would know it's a bad idea to let people vote by just typing in the thing that they want. Because how the heck am I going to aggregate it? People are going to use different cases. They're going to phrase the words differently. They might use abbreviations. So maybe I should use radio buttons to allow them to vote, you know. But if you never shipped something like that before, you might not think of that. Learning how users behave and learning how business, project owners think and don't think about certain things, that's that's going to make you not just like a better candidate, but a better developer. Having those when people think about soft skills, they always just think about communication. The soft skills is being able to anticipate problems, both from the business perspective and from the user's perspective and from the technical perspective. So all those things are going to make you better. The time management piece, learning to make trade-offs. When you're working on your own toy project that has no deadline, you're going to keep tweaking it and making it, the code more clean and like working on the design and blah, blah, blah. A lot of times you just got to ship. It's going to be a business requirement or the customer doesn't care about all those, pretty things. You got to learn to ship. So learning where you can cut corners to make the deadline is a critical skill because we don't have all the time in the world to ship. And learning where you can make sacrifices that's not going to have a big blast radius, that's super important. The feedback loops with the customer. The first thing you ship to the customer, they're going to go, wow, this is really great, but can you do this? Or can you change this? And then you change it for them. They go, you know what? Maybe change it back or maybe do this a little bit. You got to be able to learn to work within those feedback loops, and you need to be able to anticipate the feedback that you're going to get on certain things. The unknown unknowns things that I already hammered on. But the great thing with some of this is you're going to build up an adjacent skill set that's going to set you apart. I've seen lots of junior resumes that say, I am a Python developer. I graduated from a boot camp or I graduated from a college and I know Python, but there's lots of adjacent skills that are going to set you apart. I might be hiring a back-end developer, but the fact that you know some front end is going to really come in handy, not because I need you to do the front end work, but because you're going to be able to anticipate what the front end's going to need. DevOps work, if you can navigate AWS, or GCP or Azure or whatever your poison of choice is, that's going to set you way apart versus somebody who has no skill set. Shipping projects is going to, you're not going to make you an expert in it, but it's going to make you comfortable with it. And it's going to allow you to put certain things on your resume that other folks aren't going to have. So all this stuff, working on projects for other people, tremendous benefit. And finally, go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, how many slides do you have left?
I don't know. Let's see. I mean, really, like five, six
Okay,
more.
yeah, yeah, that's cool.
All right. So, like I mentioned earlier, a common mistake that people suffer from is that they say, I'm in this industry and I want to get the hell out of it, or I want to get as far away from whatever it is I'm doing now as humanly possible. Don't throw that in the trash. Again, we're on a long path to our goal, and the first step is that first job. If staying in your industry or leveraging your current role gets you on that path, you should try to take advantage of it. So I suffered from this when I was starting out, and I know everybody does. They go, Bill, you sold me on why projects are so great. I just can't think of any projects to do. It's like, how do I figure out what to work on? So we all wind up doing the to-do list app for the thousandth time, or after we've done the to-do list, we're like, oh, geez, what the hell do I do now? Um, it's not about you. It's about what can I do for other people? And that's going to help you find some of these projects. So remember, like most people, they have a problem and they may or may not know that most of them don't know that it can be solved with software. So it's about having conversations with, your friends, your family, your extended network, whatever, and just being like, hey, Dave, what have you been up to lately? Oh, how's work going? Oh, great. What's going on? What kind of problems have you been having at work and everything? Dave goes, man, doing this documentation stuff is just killing me. Maybe you're really good at writing documentation, or maybe you have experience with certain documentation packages, or maybe you know how to cheat and make the AI write the documentation for you. But Dave is a problem. But he hasn't thought, oh, gee, I got to call Bill up and ask him if he can do this for me. It's about putting yourself out there, asking people about their day, at work or otherwise. What are their hobbies? And, maybe you can connect the dots on what they're experiencing with a tool in your toolkit that can help them with their problem. Curiosity is it's going to make you, it's not going to just going to help you with this, but it's going to make you an infinitely better developer or tech person, asking a lot of questions, desire to learn more, all that stuff. It's so important. Again, look around you, talk to all your folk, talk to your friends, family, hobby groups. If you like to play Magic the Gathering or a video game or whatever, and if you're in a Discord of people who do this thing, maybe you can build a tool that the Discord can use, or maybe you just scratch your own itch or something. Um, I got um, I sold a piece of software to a large media website for a particular niche sport because I belong to it. I'm a fan of this sport, and I belong to a Discord with a bunch of people that do this. And one of the guys was keeping statistics in an Excel spreadsheet, and he was posting it every day. And I looked at it and go, man, I can just write a piece of software that'll automate it, and it won't just automate it; it'll make it so much better. So I built the thing. Everybody loved the thing. Friend of a friend of a friend connects me to CEO of large media organization. He goes, I love this. I want to buy it. And that was because I did something on a whim in the Discord. It's about putting yourself out there, and you never know what kind of stuff will happen. Unpaid's okay, particularly when you're starting out, but it's even better if you can get somebody to pay you for it, even if it's just a little bit of money, even if it's way off market. It means that they're invested in the outcome just as much as you are. And nobody asks you how much were you paid for this thing. They just ask, did you get paid for it? And if they paid you $10, then you can say, yeah, they did pay me. Um, the place I always say to look for opportunities, if somebody's doing something in Excel, it's probably a good candidate for software. People treat Excel like a database, even though it's not a great candidate for a database, or for very simple math, equations, organizing charts, all that stuff. But once they need to start getting other people involved in it, it becomes so much harder for them. So being able to take an Excel spreadsheet, make it a software product, that's a good opportunity to look for that. So if you hear your friends say, I'm doing this thing in Excel, drill on that. And lastly, the advantage with projects is most of the folks, they're going to pay you to solve the problem. How you solve the problem is up to you. So if you're like, I want to learn Kubernetes, and I'm writing a CRUD application that just allows me to put some stuff in and it dumps it into an Excel spreadsheet equivalent. The person who's buying it or I'm doing it for, they don't care how I deploy that infrastructure as long as I get it to them in a reasonable time frame and I'm not billing them for that insane amount of time it's going to take me to learn Kubernetes. But you want to learn Kubernetes, you can use other people's projects to do that. There's lots of different opportunities to do that kind of exploratory work as long as you're not charging them an insane hourly for you to learn this stuff. If you fix bid it, then what you do to deploy that stuff, that's completely up to you. So, Dave kind of gave the brief introduction of, Dave and I worked together like 15 years ago, but he didn't talk too much about, what I do today or how I found myself in the position that I am. Well, today I'm a software engineering manager for a company called the Vive Solutions. We make an Internet of Things connected automated external defibrillator. If you're interested, you can Google me or Google the company. But I've spent about 11 years as a Python and Django developer. Um, but bef- you don't see how the sausage was made to get me there. I was enlisted in the U.S. Army. When I was enlisted in the U.S. Army, they sent me to school to study Arabic. So when I came out of the Army, the company that hired me for a tech job was a translation company because I had translation experience. I didn't set out to go, oh, geez, I should leverage my translation skills to be a systems engineer or a systems administrator, which was how I started. Um, but the company that hired me said, oh boy, we get two for the price of one here. And that was my first big job, or bigger job, I should say. Prior to that, I had me and two friends, we were doing like small, medium-sized business consulting for tech. It was like way back then, it was like deploying Exchange servers, Active Directory, break fix computers, printers, all that fun stuff. So, but I learned a lot about the business problems during that experience. I've done contracting for people, where they say, where I go, hey, I think you have a problem I can help solve. And I go, give me an opportunity to do it. They go, yeah, let's go. And sometimes it makes a good amount of money, sometimes it doesn't. And then the last one on there is a gambler. I have a personally, like, I never say I'm interested in gambling from the money making perspective. It's the problem solving perspective. It's a puzzle where I make my way through the maze, and if I get to the end, I get a piece of cheese. Um, so like, the sports thing I had mentioned, I did a lot of I did a lot of software work for that that connected me with a lot of different people in that industry, and it opened up a lot of doors for me. And all this stuff all together led to me being a software developer, led to me being an engineering manager. The very first software job I got was because my previous boss at the translation company called me up and he goes, Bill, I need somebody to write a script to scrape all these email addresses off a website. Do you know anybody? I go, no, but if you give me $500 in 2 weeks, I'll take a shot at it. He goes, okay, good. That was my first software consulting project, which led me to get a job writing software in Python and Django. And now that one first job, 12 years later, is what my whole house of cards is built on. You know, so your first day as a business owner is today. You're going to go out, you're going to find some projects for other people, and you're going to roll them under that experience umbrella if you don't already have some experience to draw under. Work for other people and put that experience under your resume as a software developer. You're going to get too hung up on applying for junior developer jobs. Forget about it. You're applying for software developer jobs, not juniors. You're not going to apply for senior staff, whatever. But most of these small, medium-sized businesses, they're not going to put junior developer on the website. They're going to put software developer on the website. So you're going to apply for those, and you're going to position yourself as somebody who has experience in software, tech, whatever your pleasure is. Don't be ashamed to put those projects under that umbrella. There's no, there's nobody who's saying you can or can't do this. It's a conversation you're going to have in the interview, so don't take advantage of it, or don't, you know, um, don't don't spin a tail. But if you've done work for other people, that's experience. So again, it's a long path. Think about how we're going to signal it. We talked a lot about the resume, the lead code stuff. You got to grind it. There's books, videos, all kinds of stuff. You just got to get through it. Do a couple, do an hour a day or whatever it is. I'm not a fan of them, but lots of companies use it, so you got to suffer. The interviews, there's lots of material out there, again, to walk you through the interview process. But again, the projects that you're working on give you lots of great stuff to talk about. Your references, now you have clients or people that you've done work for, and they might refer you to somebody else who has a need, even if they don't have an immediate one, or they might decide that that one project is now a full-time job, and that can be your first job. I had the fortunate or unfortunate responsibility of maintaining my very first large software project for I think it was like almost 10 years. And I looked at that code base every day and I was like, God, what was I thinking? Or this is when I learned about this or when I didn't know about this. So, you know, um, your first project for other people might actually turn into a job. And then again, with references, referrals, all that kind of fun stuff. So to sum up, remember what we talked about in the beginning. Understand where the opportunities are. Don't waste your time trying to beat down a steel door. Understand what employers are thinking so that you can answer those questions in advance in the limited amount of time that you have available to you. Do projects for other people. You got to get some reps in by building toy projects so you can learn the thing. But as soon as you're over that bar, that minimum bar, which is lower than you think, do work for other people. Projects are hiding around you in plain sight. You just got to be curious and turn over the stones to go find them. And again, today is your first day as a business owner. You're going to get that experience bullet on your resume, and it's going to be whatever fun and exciting consulting company that you dream up, and then you can talk about that in the interview. Just go out there and get to work. It's difficult out there right now. I'm not going to lie. but it's not impossible, particularly if you go around where everybody else is going. Don't just blast out 1,000 resumes and expect to have success. Don't make your first job a FANG unless you have, some, like if you graduated from MIT or whatever, then go for it by all means. But most of us didn't. So let's think outside the box and go around the steel doors so that we can get that first job and then that door opens a crack for us.
Love it. I think this is just like jam packed with useful advice and actionable, genuinely actionable stuff. I am this. I've thought about it since you first showed me what you were talking about here, and I see it even more now. It's like you'll go on Reddit or somewhere, and there's people in there. Don't ever go to r what is it slash entrepreneur. It's like a million like dudes in their 20s that are like, what's my startup gonna be? Like I have such a hard time finding a new problem, and it's like this is the problem, right? It's like if you're not out there just talking to people, you're not gonna discover novel problems on your own. And truly, just through talking to friends, acquaintances, coworkers, whatever, trying to make the most of what you have now, whatever you're trying to transition away from, like that is, I get it. It's not the instinctive thing is, the instinctive thing is like, I'm done with this. It's all about the new stuff. I'm not going to worry about my current industry or my current coworkers or whatever anymore. But it's like that. There's so much value left in there for you to make that jump. That, yeah, I just love that advice. I think that is genuinely going to help someone out there.
It's so hard because the stereotype, which has a little bit of truth to it, is a lot of tech people are introverts. So I'm not saying go out and make like, don't become a salesperson where you make 100 cold calls a day and go up and start talking to strangers. If you can do that, cool, that, more power to you. But if you're an introvert, like I'm an introvert, I have a tight group of friends and I have like a network of like, we'll call them like internet friends, like people I hang out with in Discord, or maybe like if you're on social media platform of choice and you talk to folks, you don't have to like press the flesh or anything, but listen to them when they talk or ask them questions or, try to see, try to think about problems that your community is having. You probably have some kind of hobby, and that hobby could probably be made better if you just built a tool for that group. You know what I mean?
I love it. Thanks so much for doing this and for kind of, I think, doing the kind of expanded version of it because I think those extra details are going to make all the difference for somebody out there who's listening. Um, for all of you out there, if you've got any additional questions for Bill, anything you're wondering about, leave them in the comments below. And otherwise, thanks for watching and or listening. Bill, thank you so much. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for hiring me 15 years ago.
It was one of the best decisions I ever made. So
Yeah, I did reboot those Active Directory servers once, but I feel like other than that, I did pretty well.
it's funny the things that stick because I don't remember
It's so funny.
that
That's a story I told to make uh, some friends at work feel better about something. So it's like I've recently retold that story.
the
Uh,
sweat makes you learn. That's
I
what
was
I always
I was
said.
literally just about to quote you on "It's the sweat that makes you learn." I say that to juniors now. I'm so old.
It's like the first time you blow something up, you
Dude,
will not make that
in
mistake ever
production,
again.
that's
Yep.
where you do it. You feel it in production. That's what makes you learn. Anyway, thanks everybody, and thanks Bill.
Thanks, Dave.